I tried to find your question back because I thought it would be cool to do a shout out in this video, but your comment disappeared in the heaps and heaps of comments. So if you remember asking me this question, please comment below and let me know, and I'll pin it because I want to say hi to you. Thanks for asking this question. Hello lovelies, this is Inge Fleur, your fertility homeopath, and in this quick question video, I'm answering one of your recent questions about trying to conceive shortly after having given birth. So your question was something along the lines of what my thoughts are about trying to conceive shortly after giving birth. And I've titled the question, can or should I be trying to conceive shortly after giving birth? Because that kind of encompasses everything I want to say on the topic. I completely understand that if you have been trying to conceive for a while for baby number 1 or 2 or whichever number your recent baby was, that you're concerned about how long it may take to conceive a sibling if you are hoping to have another baby. Or you feel that you're on a time crunch. Maybe you are closing in on your 40s and you have your first baby. You think, but I still want another 4 or 5 or 6. And you feel like you should be trying right away. So let's begin with answering your question about whether it's possible. Are you able to fall pregnant shortly after giving birth? Well, in theory, yes. All you need to be doing is ovulate. Because if you're ovulating, that means that you're fertile. And no, that doesn't mean that you first need to have gotten your period, because that first ovulation, that first egg, actually happens before your first period. So don't think that you can't be fertile if you don't want to conceive yet, if you haven't had your period yet. Really be careful with that one, unless you're happy to have a surprise. So what affects whether you're ovulating? The most obvious one after giving birth is whether you're breastfeeding. Because if you're breastfeeding, you're producing prolactin, and prolactin suppresses ovulation. And some women have used breastfeeding as a contraceptive, and that is possible to a certain extent within 6 months of giving birth. You need to be breastfeeding exclusively, so no formula and no solid foods. The breastfeeding is then 98% effective in being a contraceptive. Just as a comparison, the pill is 99% effective if used properly. So just remember, even if you are within the 6 months of giving birth, even if you are breastfeeding exclusively, you still have a 1 to 2% chance of falling pregnant because ovulation has picked back up again. So if you aren't breastfeeding and you are fine and healthy, then chances are that ovulation will come back earlier. Chances are not that it will come back about 2 weeks after you've given birth, but 6 weeks after giving birth is definitely not unusual if you're not breastfeeding at all. And then if you have been breastfeeding, just expect that after those 6 months, your body is going to gear up towards ovulation again. And even if you ovulate and then have a period, it doesn't mean that 4 weeks later you're going to have another period again. It is very, very common for you to have super irregular periods if you are still breastfeeding then, even if it's not exclusive. It is absolutely possible for you to catch that first egg and know when you've ovulated and to know when you can expect your first period if you are charting. If you aren't charting yet and you're not sure how to do that, make sure to check out the link in the description underneath this video, because I've put together a free charting course so that you can learn how to do that. But the quick rundown is that you should look out for cervical mucus, because if cervical mucus is going to show up, that shows you you're gearing up towards ovulation. If you see the cervical mucus, then you can probably start testing with ovulation tests as well, so that you know if ovulation is close. It is definitely not uncommon for you to have cervical mucus for several weeks, or have a couple of days and then it goes away, and then not have a confirmed ovulation. So don't get discouraged when that happens. It's completely normal after giving birth. You can also check out the video on my channel here that is about finding the fertile window when you have PCOS, because women that have PCOS have super irregular cycles and they find charting really annoying sometimes because they just don't know when ovulation is going to happen. It's basically the same when you are postpartum. So all the information in there probably applies to you. So definitely check out that video as well. And another sign that you can definitely watch out for is feeling in the mood, because that is a sign that your hormones are picking up as well. And you may want to have an ovulation test just to check if LH is rising and ovulation is near when that happens. All right, so all that was about whether it is possible for you to fall pregnant shortly after giving birth. And the short answer to all of that was yes, it's possible. Now the question is this desirable? And the short answer is probably not. Research has shown that complications with the pregnancies and giving birth and the next baby are significantly less if there is at least 18 months in between pregnancies. So the idea is that you can start trying when your baby is a year and a half. My suggestion would, however, be to wait even 2 years. And the reason for this is not so much the complications, etc., which yes, play a role, but the biggest thing is that it takes time to replenish your body with nutrients. The pregnancy that you've had, and if you've then followed up with nursing, has really pulled out loads of nutrients from your body. And it's hard to eat so much nutrient-dense food to keep up with that. And this is also one of the reasons it is so common for women to develop cavities in their pregnancy or right after giving birth. In fact, it is common practice in many traditional tribes to space out babies at least 2 years. So first of all, I think these 2 years are important for you. So you can replenish those nutrients, as I just mentioned. That is important for you and your health, but it is also important for the health of the sibling that you're hoping for. I also think it's important that you allow enough time to process that pregnancy and that birth. Not every birth is amazing. A lot of births have some minor trauma or a big trauma, or maybe the period after giving birth was tricky for you. It's not easy to have a newborn. And I think it is worthwhile to have enough time to process this. If you haven't completely processed that when you go into next pregnancy, I often see with my patients that the past trauma comes up in that next pregnancy. Another reason that it's worthwhile to wait a little bit longer for you is because it allows you some time to start charting your cycle again and to discover any hormonal imbalance that may have remained after that pregnancy or after giving birth. For example, you may have had IVF drugs, or you may have had labor drugs, you may have had Pitocin, oxytocin, synthocyanin, however you want to call it, wherever you live. But this is the medication that is given to induce or jumpstart labor or to encourage it along, especially in hospitals. It is also given, in fact, just to get the placenta out a lot quicker. And this synthetic drug is really known to affect your hormonal system. So it's really worthwhile to have a couple of cycles to see how you're doing. Do you have any estrogen dominance? Are your progesterone levels okay? Is your luteal phase long enough to sustain an early pregnancy? Are you ovulating timely, and is it possible for an egg to mature properly? All of these things are really worthwhile to examine before you start trying again. And as I said, it is not very common for you to suddenly have a regular cycle right after giving birth or right after stopping breastfeeding. It is more common for your cycles to be a bit irregular. So it takes time to see if it goes back to your previous pattern or if it stays a little bit wonky and you need to do something about it. And then there are two other reasons that I think it is worthwhile to consider waiting longer before you start trying again. I think 2 years is ideal for you to be bonding with your baby and for your baby to be more independent so that you can deal with that next pregnancy and that next newborn. But hey, this may be a bit of a personal thought rather than something that I can support professionally. You would need to talk to a psychologist about this or somebody that is specialized in child development, obviously. But the other thing that I think is worthwhile to think about as well is that the World Health Organization also advises for breastfeeding to continue until the second birthday. And that doesn't mean you need to be nursing full time, but some form of breastfeeding is really helpful, and this is supported by the research out there. It is absolutely possible to continue breastfeeding when you're already pregnant, and even some women continue to tandem nurse, so they have a newborn and they have an older child that they are nursing. But it is not said that this is actually possible for you. With many women, the milk goes down when they fall pregnant, or the milk changes and the older sibling doesn't like it anymore. So if you want to secure those 2 years of breastfeeding, then you may want to reconsider trying earlier than the second birthday of your oldest kiddo. All this being said, of course, it remains up to you and your partner whether you decide to start trying earlier or later on. But you know that I love for you to make an informed decision. So these are the thoughts that I've got for you, and I hope it will help you in deciding what to do next. The biggest chance of you quickly conceiving after giving birth is that you prepare emotionally, as I said, nutritionally, and I would recommend that you look into the Weston Price diet, the Nourishing Traditions. Just search for that online in relation to pregnancy or trying to conceive. That is really helpful, I think. And then thirdly, that you prepare hormonally. Hey, if you want to learn more about how you can support implantation, make sure to check out the playlist on your screen right now. In the meantime, see you in the next video. Bye.